Hey everybody, Scott Brauer with Ice Team. I want to give you a couple of tips on rigging. I get a lot of questions throughout the year of not only how to rig a bait, but then how do you rig a bait outside the normal way to rig a bait. So the normal way for most people is going to be to put that piece of plastic out flat. Most people know aquatic insects don't live like that in the water. So how do you make them look more like the natural creature? Or how do you put more action in them? Well, that all starts here in my test tank shop. So in this part, this is my prototype room in here, and I really make the baits and I bring them in and I shake them in the tank and I look at underwater footage and I try to mimic the best way I can what's happening out there in the wild. And then once I get it right here, then I'm going to take it out and use it in the wild. So I want to show you a couple of real quick tips. The first thing is almost no Maki plastic is made to be fished only the way you're going to see it in the bag. You can tweak each one of these to be something different. We've talked for a few years about co-rigging, and I want to touch on that real quick. So this is a necky. It's a pink, happens to be a pink. Pink and black happen to be a very, very good color for me for crappies. I will almost always pin that necky right through the center circle that's in there. I put that circle in there for that. It's got a little more plastic and I'll push that all the way up to the front. And then I'll take whatever my second color is. Some days that's white, some days in this particular case, this is our fathead color, black with some sparkle in there. And I do want, in this particular case, that bait to push all the way out flat when I push it in there. The other thing it does is it holds that necky up in there very, very well. So when you push that up in, it holds it. You want to always reset your knot when you're dropping down in unless you want that. And then I'll shake it in the tank for a while. One of the things that you'll almost always see is on the fall, that necky is going to turn that bait to be tipping upright. And that's a big deal with crappie. When they're feeding up and they're coming up in a basin and you're seeing on your electronics that they're flying off the bottom to come get stuff, they're usually always going to hit it on the fall. So you want a little bit of a slower fall. That's the other thing that co-rigging does. When I drop this through the water table, you can see it almost always goes straight vertical. That's where the fish are going to come up and hammer it. But then when you're in the water table and you're neutral like that, you just take that and that tail on the back end of the spiky, you can either orient it down or you can orient it up. It's got a bend in it that you can do. And if the fish are up feeding like that, just that little twitch at the end of that bait sometimes is a big deal. Through the middle section of our ice seasons, both all the way from the east to the west coast, the main bite sometimes is a bluegill, sunfish, crappie, something like that. They'll start to eat their Yuri young. During that period of time, I will take a Jamie Excel, whatever the color is. So if it's a bluegill, I want to stick with a bluegill color. If it's a crappie, that's where I'm going with a Lumi, something like that. But instead of rigging that flat, which most people fish at Jamie, they're going to fish it flat like that. I'm going to tip it straight up and down like this, put it on the hook that way. And what I want to do is I want to get that to a point where it looks just like that baby bluegill body. So I'm going to push it down through there. I want to pull it out the side so that that thing is going straight up and down. I almost hide the hook right inside these little whiskers here. And then I want to present that thing, pretty much in the water table just like a fish would be. So if I'm on the bottom and I'm fishing on the bottom, like in the middle of the water table like this, I'm going to fish it, and just look like those tails that are in there. But if I'm going to fish it like a baby bluegill is eating on the bottom, then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull that back on the hook a little bit, and I'm going to point it so those tails are straight up and down. When those tails are straight up and down, it just looks more like that baby bluegill when you push it into the bottom, digging into the ground for those aquatic insects. Every size fish will eat aquatic insects at some point. So as this thing drops all the way to the bottom, you'll see that those whiskers stay all the way up top, and all I'm going to do is just wrap that bottom and make it look like a little minnow head going in there, and they're just kind of ripping through and eating those aquatic insects. And I'm going to switch real quick to the minnow head, and I'm just doing 3 baits just to show you how much we want you to play with these baits once they come out of the bag. If it's a bloodworm bite, if you're fishing a minnow head, let's say it's pinned on a tikka, you want to leave it pretty much like a minnow head, like anybody would. You pull the guts out and you leave it tweaked. And on a tikka minnow, you're going to leave it hanging out the bottom, and those little 4 appendages are just going to sit there and go like this. But there's another way to fish this that I like an awful lot, early season, but all the way through, because there's bloodworms in just about every season. This also becomes, if you take this and you pinch it, and you'll see there's a widening right at the tail, and you pinch it with your fingernail. You take that side, put that piece of plastic aside, because you can use that piece of plastic as just a piece of color splash on your bait. Don't throw it on the ice, and put it back in your bag. But then we have this, which is just 4 whiskers that are going to sit there. And I'm going to again rig that. I'm on a drop kick today. This is a gold drop kick, and I'm going to again leave that almost straight up and down, and I'm going to leave those appendages going straight up, so that when I put that in the water, you're going to see that again those whiskers, if I drop it all the way to the bottom, are going to stay upright like that. But then also it just looks like a bunch of bloodworms that are on your hook, and so that those bloodworms that are there, I guess my point is this: in any fishing situation, you're only tied to your own creativity. So be creative out there. Take your baits, break them apart. If you only, if you're getting short bit on a bigger bait, break 2 off. Put this back in the bag so you can use this as a little ant later in the season. Use this tail end, turn it straight up and down, turn it flat. There's no wrong way to fish a Maki plastic. I have tried just about every way, but if you think of something different than I can, share it with everybody else. Share it with the kids so they're going to catch more fish and put them on the ice. Scott Brauer for Ice Team. I'll see you out there.